Good morning. It is Wednesday. It's the 29th of May, and our reading is from Ephesians 6:4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Here I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've seen over the years in my counseling practice. Often I've seen parents who expect their kids to behave more like adults than they're doing. And the reality is that while we are told that children are to obey their parents, and that's true. And I've even had that discussion with kids when they're complaining, and I say, look, your responsibility is to the Lord to be who He's called you to be, regardless of who your parents may be. But there's another principle that's being shown here, and that is fathers, but I would expand and say parents, don't provoke your kids. In other words, don't set them up for failure, because they're going to act out because you're acting out on them. You are to raise them in the Lord, to discipline them when necessary. I think the reason God gives people kids is so they can see how they behave towards God, especially 2-year-olds, because He disciplines us when we need it. Because why? He's a loving Father. But there is a principle where parents need to be just and fair with their children. And if they're not, don't be surprised if the children are rebellious. And the parents have responsibility and accountability when that's the case. Look, I tell this to people all the time who are struggling with their own kids. You can only be the best parent you can be. There's only been one perfect parent, and that's God the Father. And look how His kids have turned out. So don't expect to be perfect, but depend on the Spirit to do the best job you can. Model repentance. If you are unfair to a child, be willing to admit it and ask for forgiveness, because we are to teach our children how they are to behave as Christians by how we behave as Christians. And one other piece of reminder, and that is God doesn't have grandchildren. So you can raise them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, but at some point they're going to have to own their faith for themselves, not because it's been handed down to them. So just some thoughts on parenting, which is easy for me to say because I don't have kids, but I have seen enough and helped enough parents, and the biblical principles in these areas are pretty clear. So enjoy your children, raise them in the Lord, and I'll see you again tomorrow.